Hello, it's John Heaton, and today I'm going to review one of the latter-day Badfinger albums, which I haven't reviewed yet on my channel. I've reviewed most of the albums, haven't reviewed Airwaves, and haven't reviewed this one, So No More, which was the final Badfinger album, released 17th of Jan 1981, so more than 40 years old now, if we can believe it. So what they did, following Pete Ham's sad death in '75, Joey and Tom got together in '78 and recorded Airwaves, which came out in '79. And that was a bit of a mixed bag. It wasn't terribly well produced, not very sympathetic to the Badfinger sound, I thought, other than on a couple of tracks. And a couple of forays into disco or something, which was a bit unfortunate. This album, they're trying to rock a lot harder. And here's my CD copy of it, by the way. This album's signed by Joey Molland, who I met at the Liverpool Beatles convention in 1993. Just before I go through this album, I did give this album a listen, the live album from '74, the other day. But I found it, as I remembered it, I found it not very well produced, and the drums are way too loud in the mix, and it wasn't a tremendously satisfying listening experience, apart from some nice guitar solos from Joey and Pete throughout the set. They're kind of missing a little bit a keyboard player, I think, to round out the sound. Anyway, that was the live album, that was from '74. So this was the last album they came up with, and it wasn't terribly successful. They've got Tony Kaye on keyboards, who'd also played on Airwaves, and had toured with them, or was certainly in a couple of promo videos with them. And he used to play in the band Yes. In fact, I think he was still a member of Yes at the time. And then Richard Bryans is on drums and provides a pretty good drum sound on this album, better than the one they achieved on Airwaves, in my opinion. And then Glenn Sherber is on guitar, although I notice on the CD he's not credited for some reason. I'm not sure if there was a dispute. It's produced by Jack Richardson, who's mostly famous for producing the best-known work of the Guess Who band, one of your favourites, Fit to be Tie-Dyed, and also Alex Cooper. So this album was recorded in Miami, and allegedly there was quite a bit of drugs involved, which probably didn't help proceedings. Practical jokes being played on each other and on the manager, people being thrown into swimming pools, and as I say, a lot of partying going on. And I think Tommy in particular could get a bit wild when he had a few drinks, and when he was a bit high. So that probably resulted in quite an unstable, potentially explosive situation. And I think after this album, Joey and Tom did decide to part ways. I guess they just had enough of each other. I think they had a bit of a falling out. I never really got to know the details, other than the fact I think their friendship had just run its course, and I don't think they were really to make up at all before Tom unfortunately died in November 1983. So about nearly 3 years after this album had come out, unfortunately he took his own life. Back to the album. I think it starts off pretty promisingly with a really good rocker, I Got You, and there's even a footage of them, Badfinger, doing this on a US TV show. I think it was a single, didn't get anywhere, but it's nothing special, but it's got some energy, and I like it. Joey sings the lead. Then we've got a rocker called Come On from Tom Evans. Well, he's trying to sing this passionate vocal, but it's just not a very strong melody, and hence the song isn't very good. Some people like it. It's not one of my favourites. Far more promising is Hold On, which actually had started to climb the US charts, and so their management were desperate for them to go on tour, but they decided to wait for the record to gain momentum, which it never did. So the record company pulled the plug. This song, as I say, was nearly a hit. I think it might have reached the lower part of the top 40 in the US. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's got the makings of a hit single. It's just not very well produced. The production's a bit muddy on this song, and it's not punchy enough. Tom sings it okay, but I think he probably been partying a little bit too much, so he's struggling to hit the high notes. So that they probably didn't make the best of that track. I can imagine them doing a perfect version of that in the Badfinger heyday of the 70s. Because I Love You is quite a good number from Joey. Again, it's a rocker. All these tracks on side one are rockers. In fact, there's not really a ballad on the album apart from the last track, which is not really a ballad, but it's a slower song. Because I Love You is decent, nothing more, nothing less. Rock and Roll Contract is a hangover from the Head First album from 1975, where it was one of two songs Tom Evans wrote about Stan Polly and the management screwing them over. The other being Hey Mr. Manager, which still... Well, it was briefly released on Head First, which is now long out of print, and my copy of the CD actually broke, so I'm without that album. It's not on Spotify, so I would be happy for it to be reinstalled or re-released. Rock and Roll Contract, yeah, quite an energetic version, probably better than the 75 version. It rocks along pretty well, and Tom really, you can tell he means the words. He was not a fan of the management at the time of Polly, or even at this time. I don't think they had a particularly good deal for this record, and it comes across in Tom's song, although he must have been aware with this song and when he wrote it previously that he didn't want to bite the hand that fed him. So I'm not sure if he publicised the fact what this song was all about too much. Not that the album got much airplay, unfortunately. It tends to be a bit lost in the Badfinger catalogue. But, you know, it's got Joey Molland and Tom Evans on it, who are two fine songwriters. Okay, they didn't have Pete Ham, we miss his songwriting, but, you know, other bands would kill to have two songwriters as talented as Joey and Tom. And Tom, after having taken a back seat during the latter days of Badfinger, the last three albums, Ass, Self-Titled and Wish You Were Here, he'd only contributed, you know, a couple of songs per album or even one. Here he's back to pulling his weight with Joey, and they split the songs roughly 50-50 on this album, and that's good to see. So he was getting back into being a bit more prolific. Passing Time opened side 2. Nothing special, it jogs along nicely. It's another rocker. They'd obviously made a determined effort not to write any ballads. There's not even any songs like Love Is Gonna Come at Last, which was the highlight of Airwaves. And it's probably, if we're honest, the highlight of both albums put together. There's nothing approaching that quality from Joey on here. And this is an okay song. Three Time Loser is a bit more successful, with a nice groovy beat to it, and I like the musicianship. Then we get Too Hung Up On You, which I think is probably the best track on this album. Yeah, for sure. I think it could have been a single potentially. I think it's well produced, well sung by Tom, with one of these lovely melodies that he was so good at producing. So that's top of the drawer for me. Then we get the very disappointing Crocodile, which is co-written with Rod Roach, who I had the pleasure to meet in Hammersmith in 1996 when he was playing in pubs and stuff and doing some of the stuff he'd recorded with Tommy Evans on this album. And it was a great pleasure to meet him. He's a fine man, and he was very friendly and answered all my questions about what Tommy got up to in those last few years and hanging out at the White Hart pub in Newhall, which I went down to visit once and got chatting to some of the locals as well about Badfinger. That was a fun experience, even though one local was convinced I was down there to write a book, and I had to plead with her that I wasn't, and I wasn't. Anyway, Crocodile, not one of Tom's or Rod Roach's finest moments, unfortunately. Probably shouldn't have been on the album. I'm not sure what else they had lying around which they could have used. No More is a pretty strong closer. Joey Molland in philosophical mood, and yeah, I like this song a lot. It's got a really good 60s groove to it, and this moody vocal. Yeah, a great closer to the album. So this album has its highlights. I mean, the cover is not one of them, or the back cover. The label, it's on this little known label called Radio Records. And this was the sleeve. I think this might be a US copy, I'm not sure. But either way, this album didn't do anything commercially, but it's still got a place in my heart. It's an important part of the Badfinger catalogue, and as I say, we were to lose Tommy Evans a couple of years after this, which was very sad. So this is the last throw of the dice for Badfinger with Joey and Tom before they went their separate ways. And I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.